Well, hi everyone. Welcome to episode number 42 of the RTI Speed Tips with Chad and Bob. We've had one of the things like I talked about, I think the last show when we were up in Minnesota, it was pretty nice to get to talk to a lot of people. We've been pretty fortunate. We've had a lot of people that watch the show. I had a customer come in here that bought a new car from Phoenix, Arizona that talked about watching this thing. And so I just want to thank you guys up front, all you people that are watching it. It's pretty cool. Tonight, we've got a special guest. We've got Wesley Wehrs, who is the new owner of GRT Race Cars. Welcome, Wesley.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Wesley Wehrs and how you decided to become the new owner of GRT Race Cars. And then tell us a little bit about what's going on at GRT.
So I've driven GRT late models for several years, and we were always close around here, but we were from local. So it was a really good deal for us. And towards the first of the year, the Garrison family reached out and looked at us buying the business, and we come to agreement, and I stepped in the middle of January, and I think we finalized everything by March, and just immediately went to work trying to clean everything up and get everything rolling the way it should be. Spent a lot of time working on the late model. We spent about 8 weeks completely redesigning the whole car to try to get it finished up and where it needs to be. And I think we've got a really good piece there. And we started progress on our new stock car. And we're about halfway done with building that and just trying to perfect everything and clean up a few issues and move forward.
Well, that sounds awesome. I know, like we were talking earlier, I compliment your guy Neil. He's the one that we talk to most of the time, and it's definitely, the whole operation seems to me like it's really definitely tracked very forward. What you guys have got going on there is definitely headed in the right direction. The cars that we're getting are second to none. I mean, the quality of workmanship is fantastic, and we couldn't be happier. And I got, my guy in the back shop, he's kind of one of them that if he doesn't say much, that means things were pretty good. And he wasn't always very complimentary before some of the things that would go on, but it's just one of those situations where the different management and different things going on. It's nice to see a change, and it's just like everything. Sometimes we all need to change to realize that we need to change. So that's pretty cool. So I welcome you to the modified industry, and so you were telling me you got the pleasure of running one of them here this last weekend.
Yeah, I hired a new parts guy, and he had a car of his own, and he brought it out this past week and asked me to drive it. So it was my first time to ever race a modified, and we went out and battled a few issues early on and went out for the feature and got in a wreck about halfway through, had to go to the back and come back through, and ended up finishing second. We had a battle for the lead on the white flag lap, but just kind of run out of time. But it was a good experience, and we learned a lot from it.
Well, good. Well, the GRT cars have always been very good, and it's nice to see like I said, the involvement. So now you were telling me that you got a new guy hired. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I've hired Keith Brown. He's from California. He's got a lot of experience, with a lot of sport mod stuff, but he's really smart in the modified background, and he knows all his parts, and he's really willing to help anyone. And I think that's a big thing for being able to sell parts and give tech support, is being open to helping anyone that, really needs our help. So Keith's done a really good job so far since he's been here, and Neil's kind of stepped up into the management role, and he kind of oversees the whole shop, and he's really helped out a lot filling that position.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I know Keith. We've dealt with Keith in the past, and he definitely was a very strong sport mod runner, as I remember. And so it'll be interesting. That's a good deal for you guys. So Chad, what's all going on at Wehrs Machine, and tell us about what's happening up there.
Oh, we're just rolling through another work week here, getting ready for. I think our next trip is the Harris Clash, so we're excited. We're working on pulled the trophies out today, started getting the blocks ready for that, and so we're excited about the upcoming race there, and pretty busy day today, slinging some parts out the door, so pretty standard.
You should see if you haven't seen your other parts for the trophies, you should see them here. Well, should probably be tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow anyway.
That'd be good.
Yeah. They were supposedly being built last week and headed your way. So
we got to give Pat at least like 2 days to make the drive shafts. So
yeah. Well, he's got a new machine now, so their production is up. I mean, he was telling me how they can nail something out in a pretty quick fashion. So I'd hate to have him get used to having too much time, that might overload things. All right, questions. We've got a couple questions here that people had sent in earlier, and I'll read the first one here. The question is, how much right rear shock travel in compression and extension do you get on a heavy, dry slick, or rubber down? Well, in all honesty, to be honest with you, unless the racetrack is rough, of course, a heavier racetrack or something that's got a little bit more grip to it, you're probably going to get about 3.5 inches of shock travel. You really don't want a tremendous amount of travel on that right rear. On a real dry slick racetrack, you might only get 2.5 inches of travel. I try to regulate that thing. I want to make sure that shock is running somewhere between 2 and 3 inches in all conditions. Now, you get a real heavy, roughed up racetrack that's got potholes and stuff in it. You're going to have spikes that might get higher than that. But the biggest thing is and always, and we talk about this in the Race Tech Info class, is don't necessarily go by the rubber grommet on your shock itself. Take and get underneath there and shine a flashlight on and see where the actual dust ring is, because you might see that shock is running. You say, well, I got 3.5 inches of travel, and Bob said that's too much. Well, that might have been one hole. That could have been just of the berm getting on the racetrack from the pit area. So always shine a flashlight underneath there, and you'll be able to see where the fresh oil is and where the dust has been and covered that up. So you might find that it looks like you got 3.5 inches of travel, but its normal travel is probably 2.5 inches. So that's a good. And the second one is if you ever run the pull bar flat to uphill 5 or 10 degrees going to the front. I never have. I've heard some things about some guys trying some stuff like that, but I have no experience with that. I always run somewhere in that between 12 and 15 degree angle. That seems to work pretty good. The angle helps get the traction in the car, but the other thing is not too much angle helps get the car on the right front getting in. And so it's kind of a corner exit and a corner entry thing all the way around. In my opinion, I never really go over 15 degrees. There was a point in time where we tried some stuff that was in the 24, 25 degree range. That works great, if you're really on a super short racetrack. But we found that what happens is when you get a lot of angle in that pull bar, it can actually get the car tractioned up too quickly in the middle of the corner and cause the car to kind of have just a slight mid-corner push. And in today's world, if that thing pushes just a little bit in the middle of the corner, somebody's driving underneath you. And the competition today, we had a guy from California that from Phoenix that picked up his car this weekend, and he stayed and went to Marshalltown and Boone, and he was just amazed at the quality of racing that is out here in the Midwest. And And I'm kind of used to it, so I'm like, really, is that good, huh? Oh yeah, it is. And I'll have to say, the other night at Boone, it was definitely a good show. One more question is, left rear brake floater on the birdcage or individual rod are clamped up. 4-bar crate motor, modified G60 tires. I'll let you take that one, Chad.
For the most part, on a pull bar car, you're going to be either on the brake floater or on the suspension cage. If you have both of them clamped to the axle tube, when you decel, hit the brake pedal, it tends to have the pull bar. You break traction too much with a pull bar car. So most of the time you're on the brake floater rod. The brake floater rod's a little bit more tunable. It's its own separate rod, and it has a little bit less effect. So when you clamp to the cage, it's more drastic. You're transmitting spring and shock assembly that's behind there, along with the 4-link rods. So it can be very aggressive, if you will. We like to use that kind of in a short track situation, and then when you go to a bigger track, put the bar back on. That's kind of why, 10 years ago we designed that combo cage to be able to go both ways. So there's definitely an advantage to one at this track and this one at this track. So that's one of them things where you kind of got to tune with it and try both of them and see how it affects you and how you drive the race car and how you brake and just kind of work with it. Some guys put it on the cage and they just can't drive it because they're too aggressive with their feet, and they get it on the right front so hard they're just digging trenches with the stub. And so them kind of race car drivers are going to always be better with a brake floater arm. So there's no magic probably in one or the other. It's just about what works for you and the racetrack you drive it at.
Next question for you, Chad. What does the upper and lower left rear bars do when moved up or down on the chassis?
So the top rod is your drive angle. So when you increase drive angle, you're increasing traction, increasing index into the spring. Your lower rod is going to either increase or decrease loose roll steers. So one, the drive angle, and the other one is roll steers. So it's just kind of tuning both of them. If you put more drive angle in, you're going to get more traction from the center out. You get too much angle, you're going to get to where you're like a pogo stick. So you can have a ton of grip instantly, and you throttle too hard, you're going to lose that traction. So it's a balancing act there.
So does that have the same effect on a late model car there, Wesley? Pretty much.
Yes. Yes, sir. It works the same on pretty much just any 4-link suspension.
Okay, and next question, 3-link question. Which has more of an effect, moving the right side trailing arm down on the frame and up on the rear end? Actually, it would be the other way around, Ryan. Moving the up on the frame is going to get you more angle. Moving it down on the rear end is going to give you more action. It's going to make things happen quicker. It's going to give you a little bit more leverage with that bar, and both of them increase the angle of that bar. So in reality, a left rear trailing arm on a sport mod car works pretty much the same as an upper arm on a 4-bar car. It's your traction device, and by putting more angle in it, you're going to get more traction. Now, you're going to get more steer, but you can kind of accomplish that with other tuning devices on the car. And back on that brake floater deal, Chad had mentioned the fact that it's definitely something you need to tune with. And I totally agree that both of those have tremendous advantages in certain situations, but you need to take the time and if you ever get the opportunity where there's a racetrack that has a test session, or you can rent a racetrack, those are the type of things that, man, like Wesley, you were talking about, you guys have a racetrack that you can go to and do some testing and stuff. And that just is so huge. And I realize everybody's got their work and doesn't always have the time, but if you can make the time, it's money well spent. tell me some things that you guys have accomplished with test days and stuff like that.
I mean, a lot of stuff that we accomplished with test days was just kind of figuring out where our shocks needed to be. We did a lot of work with that on the late model, and we plan on doing that with our stock car once we actually get it built. We want to be able to get it out and try everything out and see what's going to work best for us. But, you know, we can kind of make our own track conditions however we need them, and that's really helped us out a lot.
So what is the projected date on your stock car?
That's a really, really good question. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't even really put it out on the market yet, is because we're not 100% sure when we will, you know, have them in production so we can get them finalized and, you know, do some testing on it.
Awesome. Lindsay's got a question. She's got 2014 GRT. Setting right height gives me numbers for all corners except left rear. It says set by wedge. How does one do that? Because I'm lost. Well, basically what I actually did, and that's how we set the cars up here ourselves. We set the front end and we set the right rear. Now, when we do that, then we look at our numbers and say, for example, we want 60 pounds of bite in the left rear tire, and that's just a number. I'm not saying everybody runs 60 pounds. It's just a number. We could use 100 pounds. It doesn't matter. Number's a number. So then what you do when you get all those numbers, now you'll sit there and you go, well, I got those right heights that you told me to do, and I've only got 10 pounds of bite. Well, here's what you have to do. Remember, bite, what we do with bite is we're actually just transferring load from one spring to the other. So say for example, you have a car that you think it needs a little bit more bite in it, and we got our numbers right. Well, what we do is we take and put like a turn down on the right front, take a turn out of the left rear, take a turn out of the right rear, and add a turn to the left rear. When doing that, when you kind of work the car in that X fashion, left rear to right front, left front to right rear, what you do is you're shifting the balance of the car, but you'll actually find that your right heights will actually be maintained, and you just have to work at the car like that. I've had nights where it's taken me 4 hours to scale a car to get it exactly where I wanted it to be. Most people tell me I'm a little too picky, but one of the things that that works pretty well, and just work at it in that corner, and you'll end up getting your right height numbers where you want to. And like I said, I don't really care where the left rear is. You know, usually the left rear, like on a GRT car, is usually about 13.25, 13.5 inches, something like that, with that 12.75 right rear measurement. But if you work it in that manner, you'll get it. It just takes a little practice, and pretty soon it'll be something that'll only take you an hour to do, and you kind of know what to do with it. Justin wants to know, what are some of the new modifications to the new GRT Modified?
So some of the stuff we're working on for going into 2022 is that we're not really going to change a whole lot on the cars other than fixing a few of the small issues. We've got a few small things like your screw jack bolts in the front end, you know, just making sure that they line up perfectly and really trying to perfect the car that we have. So we're not really making any wholesale changes. We're outsourcing a lot of things that were done in the house before, but, you know, we're looking for better quality. And there were some things that were being done before that, you know, there was really no business with us doing them, and we can have things laser cut and precision bent, and it just makes a more quality piece.
Yeah, I mean the 2021 car. I mean, Jake McBurney's car has been really good. Jeremy Mills's car has been really good. We've had great luck with that. I mean, Jake's technically a rookie this year. He's second year in a modified, and he went up on the North Dakota tour, and you know, he missed the show one night. But you know, for a rookie going and people say, well, wasn't quite as many cars on the North Dakota Tour this year. And yeah, they didn't have probably the numbers that they've had in years past, but they weren't short on quality. I mean, the quality of cars was pretty dang good. And each show was an extremely good show. So maybe the last show with it rubbered down was a little bit less exciting, but that happens when you get into summertime and things like that. So yeah, like I said, I think the piece is a quality piece, and making some of them improvements like you're talking about will just add to the quality of the unit. Michael, can you talk about IMCA Sport Mod Stagger? When to increase or decrease for the track conditions? A lot of times stagger can be a little bit of a driver preference. My personal opinion, I always like to see stagger in the car. It's that old, you take a styrofoam cup and you roll it around your trailer, your table, and you'll see how the thing kind of turns on its own. Well, stagger kind of makes the race car do the same thing. I'm not opposed to a sport mod car where the racetrack's got a little bit of grip in it, running an inch, or 2.5 inches of stagger in the back and an inch in the front. When the racetrack gets pretty slicked off and stuff, we'll actually cut the stagger down a little bit, maybe go down to 1.5 inches. But I've never run under 1.5 inches because I still like to make sure that the car, especially with a sport mod, because you don't have quite the steer capabilities that you have with a 4-link car. That works pretty well. But make sure, one thing to note, front stagger helps the car turn into the corner. Rear stagger helps the car turn when you're on the throttle. Justin, I have a question on what better
we already did that one.
Okay. IMCA modified right rear birdcage index into the spring, static 0, dynamic negative out of the spring 1.5. Is this wrong? If so, what do I need to be at? I'll let you take that, Chad.
So the right rear, we like to be 0 degrees or 1.5 degrees into the spring. So the gauge would actually be indexed forward into the spring. When you start out of the spring, we don't like to kind of sweep through below 0 there. So we always want to have the cages start in their natural motion to where they're going to go. So indexed into the spring, 0 to 1.5 on the right rear and 0 to 3 on the left rear.
Yeah, if you start with a negative on that right rear, you actually end up with kind of a dead spot. The car has a transition period in the middle of the corner where it's not completely sure what's actually supposed to be happening here. Brandon says, love my new GRT Sport Mod. Keep up the good work, Wesley Wise. Excited to see where you can go with these cars. Great compliment. Thank you, Brandon. I'm quite sure Wesley appreciates that. Especially being a new owner and stuff. It's nice to know when you're doing a good job.
Yeah, Brandon was one of the first customers that we had through Grabowski whenever I first got here. So we got to know him a little bit through that, and it's good that he's enjoying his new car.
Well, and of course, our old buddy Grabo, he's pretty much of a staple for GRT. Him and Mr. Phillips. How do you index your bird cages?
Well, we kind of just covered that, but if you're asking how, you shorten one rod and lengthen the other to get the cage to rotate one direction or the other is the method to do it. So when you're wheelbasing the car, doing both rods, and when you're indexing, you're doing one way on one and the other way on the other to get the cage to index, whether it's the right rear or the left rear into the spring.
On an IMCA Sport Mod, should the rear trailing arms be square or should they have toe? I always run toe on our cars. Our left rear toes in 2 inches. Like if you're looking at it from the back of the car going forward, it actually toes in 2 inches to a square measurement, and the right rear toes in 1 inch. we've had very good luck with that. You go too much more with, you really don't want to go a lot more with the right rear because it kind of seems to affect the steer a little bit more. Left rear works well when that thing, when that car, the trailing arm's getting angle in it and the rear end's moving forward. You need that extra inch of angle to make sure that everything's still going straight forward under full throttle. On a hobby stock car, if the left front tire comes off the ground, what corner of the car does the weight transfer to? Is it a bad thing if that happens? Also, is anyone using a load stick on the left rear of a stock car yet? I'll answer the first part of the question, and I'm quite sure Chad knows more about the second part of it. Well, I don't think it's a bad thing that the car is leaning on the right rear a little bit. The only thing it is you got to remember when we get cars on the right rear and we get them on the right rear too hard, what happens is now all of a sudden they start taking horsepower. And like on a hobby stock, when you're dealing with a crate motor or a less horsepower motor, you don't want to hook that up too hard because the tire that you have, that narrow tire, is going to have a fair amount of side bite the way it is, and then you don't really have the power. So it can cost you some corner speed when that's happening, but when the car is falling on the left or on the right rear, it kind of actually means that the spring is actually compressing and not necessarily holding that corner of the car up. How about on the load stick? Are people using the right rear of a stock car on a load stick?
So the load sticks, we kind of came out with them for the front for an independent suspension. The rear end, when you have a live axle like that, it's kind of difficult. So when you try to put a load stick on one corner and you're going to move this up and down, you're really at the liberty of whatever's going on the other side. So we've had some guys experiment with, if you take a setup stick and you're center to center on your whichever corner, so you have the setup stick in one side and then you put the load stick in the other side, you can get that some kind of a number to go off of. But anytime you're taking that axle and adding that variable, you can get some inconsistencies. So a stock car is a lot easier because it's a rigid clamped rear end, so it ain't doing all the motions that like a 4-lane car is. So when you bring in the suspension cage and the indexing and that kind of thing, it's really something that we don't have a whole lot of guys doing it. There are some guys that have bought 2 load sticks, so they'll have one on both sides in the rear. But you really need to focus on some consistency if you're going to do that, in my opinion, because if your right rear ride height number is 18 inches, you need that solid setup stick in there at 18 inches, and then you can play with that load stick on the left rear. And you're just building a notebook. It ain't going to tell you any actual load numbers. It's just going to give you something to, take some data at whatever racetrack you're at. So can you use the load stick on it? Yes, you can. Can you get really far off base? Probably. You just need to be consistent, in whatever you do. We got a lot of sprint car guys now are trying to use them, and the asphalt super late guys are using them to set their sway bars. So there's no doubt that the load sticks will give you data in a lot of different situations. You just need to understand how to be consistent with it.
Yeah. Brian, hi Brian, how's everything going? I haven't heard much from you guys this year. Or I haven't, that's not your fault, that's my fault. I probably haven't been paying attention to what's going on. But anyway, the question is, Chad, do you make a cover for the body mount holes on the frame?
We do not. Performance Bodies has one. I don't know who made it. I don't know who manufactured it. Do you have any, Bob? Have you seen it?
We've had some from Performance Bodies.
Yeah, that's who's got them. So we
work really. I tell you what, they work really nice to keep the mud out of that right front corner. I mean, it's at first when I first looked at it, I thought it was ridiculous. But then after we used one, I'm thinking, well, that's a smart idea. Because I was thinking, why would you want to plug that hole? Now I know, duh. Going from a tacky heat to a dry slick main, what would be the one change you'd make? From a tacky heat race to a dry slick main, say for example, if I was My number one go-to, and this isn't necessarily everybody else's, but this would be my opinion. I would take the car from having a little bit of trail in the right rear to having a little bit of trail in the left rear, or what we call lead in the car. I would shorten my right rear turn and lengthen my left rear turn. What that does is that helps the car just come up off the corner a little straighter. In your tacky heat race, you need that car to keep turning all the time. You need it to keep turning on the throttle. Where when your racetrack gets slick, and that's kind of what I tell people, if they're coming up off the corner and their car's hanging the tail, I would rather add some lead to the car rather than take stagger out of it, because if the car's good on corner entry, good in phase 2, which is the middle of the corner, I wouldn't want to affect it off the corner other than how it drives, how the rear wheels push the front wheels forward. And by putting some lead in the car definitely is a good idea. Travis, does running a stiffer right rear spring help transfer weight to the right front corner on corner entry? I can't really actually say that it helps get you any more weight transfer to the right front. The right front on corner entries, right on the beginning of corner entries, pretty much on its own. But what happens is when you soften the right front and you get a lot of movement on that right front corner, you almost need to stiffen the right rear to combat the movement on the whole right side of the car. By stiffening the right rear, you're going to get more side bite. The car's actually going to be tighter getting in. And most generally, what you're wanting to do when you soften the front end up is you want the car to get in and help get it turned. But of course, we want to make sure it turns, but we don't want it to turn too much. So a lot of times we stiffen the right rear accordingly. The downside to stiffening the right rear, and this is kind of where you have to look at the fact that when I do this change of softening the right front, stiffening the right rear, I'm hoping I pick up momentum, because you are going to lose a little bit of traction up off the corner, and that can kind of hurt you a little bit. So there might be a little bit more tuning need to be done with that. But as a rule of thumb, the stiffer right rear definitely will help the corner. And you just have to kind of play with it on corner exit. But that definitely works well. Now, once again, there's such a thing as, of course, going too stiff. A lot of sport mods run a 225 to a 250 right rear. And it just depends on the driver and how they like that car to be, how tight they want that car on corner entry. Eric, front and rear stagger for 5 degrees of banking versus 20 degrees. Do you make many adjustments? The flatter the racetrack, to be honest with you, I would actually run more stagger on a flat racetrack than I would on a high bank racetrack, just because of the fact that I want to try to make sure and roll the corner better. On a high bank racetrack, you could actually get by with a little less stagger because your 20-degree banking is helping the car to turn on its own. So a lot of times when we go to a real flat racetrack, I'll run a little bit more stagger and a little bit more lead to get the car off the corner, but the stagger seems to help get the car in and roll the middle. But that's also a driver preference too, and some other guys might have a different opinion than what I have on that, but that's what I've found that has worked pretty good for me in the past. We've got a racetrack out here, Marshalltown Speedway. The racetrack's relatively flat on the bottom of the racetrack, and it's pretty high banked around the top of the racetrack. And you'll find that if you want to try to run the bottom, you've got to have a little bit more stagger in the car and to get the car to turn and roll the bottom a little better. There's a guy in California who makes a nice one. Message me and I can connect you with that. I might have missed something here.
That mud
About the
plug.
plug.
Oh,
Yeah.
the mud. Oh, I got you. The mud plug deal. Yep, got it. Bob Harris, he wants you to know that he loves his GRT, our current national IMCA Sport Mod point leader. Apologize, Bo. I really felt bad the fact that you come to town and we leave town. That was kind of poor timing on our part. If we wouldn't have made arrangements before, we'd kind of tried to shuffle our schedule around a little bit, because I sure would have liked to meet you, and it was an honor to have you here at the shop. And so you're doing a great job. Bo drove 10 hours last weekend to go race out in Utah. So dedicated to the sport, and we sure appreciate your business, and I'm glad you're doing well with that car. How do you recommend making the car turn in better on a 2-link with a smashed left rear spring? Well, I don't have as much information on a smashed 2 left rear spring. I know there's some guys that are doing a great job, and their cars are pretty fast with that deal. I've not had, like I said, I've not had a lot of experience. We've played with a couple guys and worked pretty good. The biggest thing when you got that smashed spring, you kind of got to soften the right front up a little bit, and you might need to have a little bit more rebound in your shock absorber, a little bit stronger 0 point or something to that effect to help the car get in and turn a little bit better. Usually, with that smashed left rear spring, the cars are actually freer. So you might consider taking a little bit of panhard bar angle out of it. Those would be some changes you could make. Our old buddy Pat, of course, we were just down there at Pat's place and had an interview with Pat the other day. Pat's comment is, good to see GRT's legacy is going on. So another congratulations there, Wesley, that you're doing a good job keeping things going.
Pat's helped us out with our new late model program, and we appreciate everything he's doing there. So look forward to keeping that going.
So, how many days till the Harris Clash, Garrett?
15.
Needless to say, it's 2 weeks from tomorrow night. So yeah, 15 days till the Harris Clash. Can't wait. We're looking forward to that. We've got some exciting things coming up. Our next live broadcast will be at the Harris Clash. We'll just do it like we did last year there, Chad, and have some guests on board with us. Hopefully we can get last year's winners or something on board if they get there in time. That'll be fun. Once again, I'm excited. We got some exciting news from Wehrs Machine that's coming here in a couple days. It's going to definitely make the modified guys smile a little bit more. Pat stepped in and helped bump our sport mod purse up a little bit, so that's going to be good. I'm excited, man. I can't wait. It's only 2 weeks away, and it just seems like, it's been months ago. It was months ago here, just a couple days ago, it seems like. The boys going fast, and we're getting ready. Chad's working on the trophies again already, and of course those trophies are unbelievably awesome. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those trophies, Wesley, or not, but it's made out of shock absorbers. And then, of course, we've got all of the billet trickery that Chad does, and Pat does his drive shaft trickery on it. So it's a drive shaft with shocks on the outside, and it's kind of become an industry standard trophy that nobody else has actually, so far, knock on wood, copied it. They've definitely used some of the other things, but they haven't copied the trophy, so that's exciting. I don't see how they can copy that trophy unless you did it, Chad.
People generally don't want to work that hard.
Yeah. Funny how that works. Yeah, it's much easier just to call up somebody and say, "Hey, we need this." But anyway, we're excited about it. I can't wait. And it's going to be another. Once again, for those of you guys out in New York and all over, and actually Wesley, if you can't make it, you can watch the show on IMCA TV. And of course, we're hoping everybody can make it. It's going to be a good, another good show. Year number 30. Hard to believe it's been 30 years doing that deal. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I kind of think maybe it has been 30, but no, it's been a lot of fun, and it's a definite a legacy that I want to keep going as long as I'm around here to keep it going. So that'll be exciting. Greg's got a question. When using your shock, they work good. Should they be unhooked from the car when I scale it? They are all gas shocks. Well, what I actually tell customers, if you're running a modified, I unhook just the front two shocks. The reason being is because that right front shock has quite a bit of rebound in it, and it can kind of mess with your scaling because it takes a little time to release. The other shocks, even though they're gas shocks, the two rears, even though they're gas shocks, they don't have a lot of 0 point in it, and they don't have a lot of rebound in them. So, they're pretty normal. They don't affect the car a whole lot. But I try to recommend running, taking them off. The sport mod guys, you can take your right rear and unhook it. Most right rears are a 4-valve shock, so there's just not a lot there that holds the car in one spot. But that right front shock can be, it can make your scaling job timely if you don't unhook it. Plus, then the fact when you unhook the front end, or the shocks on the front end, you can move the front end up and down and listen for squeaks and binds and all that good stuff that you go, oh, well, we need to fix this stuff because it shouldn't sound that way. And you're right, it shouldn't sound that way. What's your opinion on the AMOD setup with no extended load on the left rear and extended on the right rear? Jason, I haven't had a lot of experience with that, so I really can't really tell you for sure. I'm not really sure. Answer to Sean's question, no, it's actually on IMCA TV. Hi guys, thanks for doing this over and over. We appreciate it, CJ. Jeff, what is the best way to get side bite on a dry slick racetrack? IMCA have a right rear 225 spring already. Well, Panhard bar is going to help you get a little bit of side bite. Moving some weight around can help the car get some side bite. A lot of times on a real slick racetrack, we'll run a soft compression shock on the right rear with a little bit more rebound in it so that it gets the car in on the right rear a little bit quicker. Keep in mind when the racetrack slows down, your corner entry speed slows down too. So we almost need to soften the right rear shock up so that it gets the movement to the right rear quicker than it, so it's more like when the racetrack's got speed to it. So I work a lot with the right rear shock, and in the Panhard bar, I mean, a quarter or an inch adjustment on that Panhard bar can be a huge adjustment. So it's not one of those deals where it's like the old days where we move it an inch. You move it an inch, and yeah, well, needless to say, you'll have that. There's no doubt about that. The old left front will be up in the air, and you'll be looking at the lights. Going to Boone with Cope and Wesley. See you all there. I'm looking forward to you guys coming to Boone. Like I've told Wesley, that it's just another experience in his wheelhouse that he needs to have. There's just nothing. There's nothing else you compare an experience Boone. And the amount of races that they do and the finesse that those guys have to run that program where they run 40 races plus per night, it just blows me away. And that's just in one division. So it's pretty amazing. It's a well-oiled machine, and those guys at Boone Speedway do an awesome job. So we're looking forward to having you there. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more room in our shop when you get here so you can see what you won't think our shop is too small. Right now we've got 6 race cars, a golf cart, and one of the simulators still in the garage. And of course, Chad's been here. This place isn't super duper big, and everybody's kind of elbows to elbows here. Should we make adjustments on a lift arm modified, or should we leave it preset? I've never had much luck with doing a lot of adjustments on a lift arm car. It's pretty much kind of, it is what it is. I mean, you preset it to a certain setting like your chassis builder wants you to do, and I don't know too much about that. What's your experience, Wesley? Do you run lift arms on your stuff?
We run lift arms on our late models, but we don't do so much on our mod program. A lot of it's pull bar stuff, but mostly the adjustments we make on our lift arm stuff in late models is just adjusting length for whatever you need, maybe just different tracks mainly.
Sean, when would you adjust the panhard bar up or down on the rear end? On the rear end itself, if the racetrack's pretty heavy and it's pretty hammered down or a little bit rough or whatever, I'd probably recommend running it up a little bit higher. We kind of use our measurement that we use on our GRT stuff. We set for a heavier racetrack, we set it at 3.5 inches from the center of the axle housing down to the center of where the panhard bar bolts. And then when the racetrack gets real slick, we'll run 4 inches. That's on a sport mod. On an actual modified, we start with the car usually about 1 inch above the pinion, and we'll run it usually in a dry slick racetrack, run it 1/2 inch above the pinion. Now, I know a lot of guys do that quite a bit differently, so you definitely want to talk with your chassis builder if you're running an A-mod, because some guys run a lot more rake in their panhard bar than what we do. Our stuff is a little bit flatter. Wayne, left rear wedge versus right rear wedge. What are the effects of more to either side? Well, more left rear wedge actually can free the car up getting into the corner, and it'll give the car a little bit more traction up off the corner. Right side wedge makes the car tighter getting in and gives you a lot more side bite. So with right rear wedge, you'll actually have more corner. You can have more corner speed. What that does then is that actually helps you accelerate off the corner because you've got more momentum. It's one of those deals where it's a driver-based deal. Some guys like to run the car off the right rear. Some guys like to run it off the left rear. I think a lot of it also depends on the tire that you're running. Our IMCA tire, I'm not convinced that running a lot of right rear on it would be the ideal thing, because those cars can kind of that tire can actually get a little bit, can seal over pretty quickly. And so if you're running on the right rear, it's going to get a little hot, and restart's liable to seal over and cause a problem for you. What's a good base load number on a left front sport mod? CJ, tell me what you mean as far as your load number. Are you talking about with a load stick? Because to be honest with you, I've not actually loaded the left front on a sport mod car, and my load stick guy isn't here right now. He could give me some numbers on the left front of a modified, but I've not really paid much attention to the left front. I've always just focused on the right front. Thomas, what's something to help a four-link car on a rough racetrack? Well, the biggest thing that helps with a four-link car on a rough racetrack is taming down the links. What would your opinion be, Chad?
Yeah, flatter panhard bar, flatter pull bar, less drive angle. Just you're going to want to float over the bumps instead of having them arms short and and at drastic angles, it's going to be rough and hard to drive for sure. The longer arms, longer panhard bars, always better in the rough.
Yeah, that's a situation like with the modifieds where you, with Chad's one mount, you can run a 20, you can run you get the 21 inch or 19 inch and like a 22 inch bar. And that 22 inch bar definitely on a rough racetrack just makes the car so much more drivable, and especially the panhard bar itself. Anytime you can kind of take a little bit, make that a little more neutral feeling, the car's going to be better. On a high bank, bigger 3/8 mile track that's usually a little bit rough, how can I keep my frame from digging? Open to any suggestions because I'm tired of sucking there. Well, a lot of times there's a lot to that left front. You know, it kind of depends on the braking aspect of the car. Like Chad talked about, sometimes if you're on the cage with the brake, it can actually get the car on the right front a little bit more. Backing up your corner, you know, and making more of an arc out of the corner can definitely help. I got one fly here that his life's going to be history after this show's over. Anyway, besides the fly. Anyway, that's one of the things. A lot of people say, well, let's just stiffen the right front spring. Well, you'll actually find, I've actually had guys try that, and they found that they actually dug into the ground more with a stiff right front spring than they did with a softer right front spring. The other thing, back to, you know, shock absorbers. You know, you might have, depends on what you're running on your right front for shock. If you've got like a 3 compression right front shock, that shock's going to get that car in and on the right front very quickly, and sometimes can cause it to dig. What happens is it just gets the car there too soon. You know, a lot of times, depending on how soft the front end is, we'll run a 5 compression right front shock on something that's a little bit rough from time to time. When you move the J-bar down on the pinion, does the car think it has a stiffer spring or a softer spring in the right rear? What's your opinion on that one, Chad?
Down on the pinion?
Yeah.
Should make it feel like it's got a softer spring, right?
I would think so, because it's going to actually load the car more. You know, I'd have to think about that way. In my opinion, I would think you're putting more leverage there. So when you put more leverage on there, it's going to want to get the car on the right rear more, which in turn is going to make it feel like it's softer, in my opinion. Yes, sir, load stick. I only asked because I just started using one when I dropped my right front spring for your suggestion. I'll tell you what, we've got a couple in-house guys that have modifieds. I can't really actually get you any information on the one car, but Rocky's car, the 99 car, I can have him load stick it so we actually know. That's a great question. It's something we've not done, but I'll mention that to him, and maybe he can get that for us here sometime this week. Bryce, hi Bob and Chad, thanks for all of these videos. 2014 GRT standard cage setup. Do you set your 2 inches of preload on the left rear at the max droop or in the middle of the adjuster? And what would you measure? What would the measurement be? Well, I would set it in max droop. Isn't that kind of what the industry is doing most of the time? I see you shaking your head there, Wesley.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what I would do. I mean, that's going to be your only true way of figuring out exactly what your extended preload is. It's measuring it at full droop.
And if I'm not mistaken, on the 2014 cars, I was thinking the GRT setup sheet was set to set your chain at 18.25 inches. I wouldn't be afraid to going to 18.5. We run a little bit more now than when that car originally was built, but where that rail is basically in the same location height-wise in our 2014 as it is in the 21 car. So that's not a big difference. Nathan wants to know where do you all run? Where do you actually race at, Wesley?
We race all around Arkansas, some up into Missouri, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Texas. So just Arkansas and all the surrounding states.
Okay. Team 911, 105 Speedway, Cleveland, Texas. Car pushers on the gas and the tires are spinning, not really going anywhere. Well, Robert, I hate to have your problem there. That's a good one. That would have to say would potentially be multiple issues. If the tires are spinning, a lot of times when a car's got a push on the gas, people will think it's a throttle push, so they go kind of to the left rears, not making the right front or overpowering the right front. But actually, I found that side bite, having too much panhard bar on the right rear and getting the car on the right rear too hard definitely would make that car want to get a lot of side bite to the point where you'd hit the throttle and the right rear tire stuck so hard. I could see where it could break traction but still be pushing. I'd have to look at my front end measurements and stuff, because if that car is not turning down in, there could be some issues in the front of the car. Roger, doesn't lowering the J-bar lower the roll center? Yes, you are correct. It would lower the roll center. That is correct. Okay, we are out of time. We've got a couple minutes left. Once again, I want to remind everybody about the Harris Clash coming up here in 2 weeks from tomorrow night, and that's where our next show will be, is at Deer Creek Speedway, live from there at the Harris Clash. I want to thank you a lot, Wesley, for coming on and kind of letting us know a lot about what's going on at GRT. And like I said, I know from being a customer, I've seen great things that you guys have done, and definitely like the program going forward. And like Pat Fagan said, you're doing a good job of keeping Mr. Joe's legacy going strong.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the business. We really appreciate it.
Well, Chad, I guess we'll see you in 15 days, and I guess we'll talk to you in 15 days. I'll call you tomorrow, and we'll talk about that, what we were talking about earlier, and I'll kind of lay some numbers out and see what you think.
Sounds good.
All righty. Well, thanks, everybody. We appreciate it. Last question, is this dirt only? Well, I don't have a tremendous amount of asphalt experience, so I'd have to say it's more dirt only. But anyway, thanks again for watching, guys. We appreciate it. And we'll stay tuned. Once again, 2 weeks from tomorrow night at the Deer Creek Speedway,
Thank
Spring
you.
Valley, Minnesota, live. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.